Yeah, watching very closely, Joe. Big budget, long budget, hugely significant budget. And we are at Pudsey Leisure Centre in the heart of the community here in Pudsey, which is in Rachel Reeves' constituency, with people from a range of different industries and sectors to try and work out what some of this is going to mean in the real world. We can talk to some of them now. We're joined by Amanda McLaren, hello, who's the managing director of a big textile manufacturing business here in Pudsey, employing more than 200 people. Presumably, some of those measures that will really impact you are those employer national insurance contribution increases and the minimum wage. Have you had a chance to assess what the impact might be?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to work through the financial impact of this budget, but without doubt it feels like employers have taken, a very big hit of the 40 billion, with almost half of it going to employers. I think the national minimum wage impact once again is hard hitting after 3 successive increases in prior years that were also quite hefty. And in addition to that, the increase of 1.2% on national insurance to 15%, coupled with the impact of the threshold moving from 9,100 to 5,000, has a huge impact on our business, and I'm sure many others. So quite unexpected in terms of a triple hit.
And so when the Chancellor is talking about growth being the central ambition of this government, and that you see what you're calling a hit to business, how do those things marry? Does that mean you're going to continue to grow?
It's a compromise, without doubt. It's compromise to the costing model, compromise to next year's budget and how we determine, where the costs that we want to spend should go and how far we can go. Obviously, growth to every business is important, and we must reinvest. Some of the positives I heard was reference with Make UK and the institutions and bodies within manufacturing in the UK that will be looking to support perhaps capital investments or research and development and innovation. So we have to give that commitment, but equally there's some constraint when you hit with the increases that we've seen today.
Also here is Max Shepherd from the Yorkshire Building Society, which has got its headquarters in Bradford, so not far from where we are here in Pudsey. Max Shepherd, thank you very much for being here. Again, back to that point, the government keeps talking about growth, saying that the focus of its budget, the way to get investment in public services, is to grow the economy. Are you convinced that what Rachel Reeves announced today is going to realise that ambition?
It's been a really interesting budget, hasn't it? Because on the one hand, you've got the 40 billion of tax increases to go towards the public service increase in spending, but on the other hand, you've also got that 100 billion pound commitment in capital investment, which will directly stimulate the economy going forwards over the next 5 years. So it's very difficult to tell from an economic perspective, but she certainly has a plan in it, and that what she's laid out certainly will stimulate the economy from a capital investment point of view.
So there were a lot of conversations pre-budget about whether or not the relaxation of some of the fiscal rules, particularly around borrowing, might send a shiver through the market. So are you getting any sense yet of what the impact of this budget is going to be? Yeah,
so the initial market reaction actually there's not been any spook moment. It looks pretty stable. So interest rate expectations have stayed pretty stable throughout the day, throughout the morning. So no, there's not been anything as of yet. And this is really because Reeves is saying a lot of this increase in borrowing is all down to that. It's going to go on capital investment. Yeah.
Also here is James Barwise from the Road Haulage Association. James, we spoke a little bit earlier about what you might be looking out for in this budget. There was a bit of good news for your sector, which is that 1 year at least freeze in fuel duty. What's the likely impact of that?
Well, this is fantastic news for hauliers, not just here in Yorkshire, but up and down the country. It's something we at the Road Haulage Association have been campaigning for in the run-up to the budget, and we know through analysis this will save the average haulier across the country at least £2,000 a year. That is an incredible relief for hauliers who, the last couple of years, have really been feeling the pinch in the perfect storm of financial conditions. But we also know that over the next 5 years, if the proposed hike of 5 pence per litre had gone up, it would cost UK GDP 430 million. So it's really encouraging that the Chancellor is starting to think about these measures, not just in terms of the benefit for the industry, but the wider economic benefit that the relationship between freight and logistics has in growing the UK economy.
And back to the point that we heard right at the very beginning about the impact of this budget on business. What's your thoughts?
Well, this is just for the first year, and there's lots of measures we still need to see. For example, there's a huge conversation to be had about the relationship between road building schemes, freight and logistics, and how you grow the economy. We didn't hear much from the Chancellor today about schemes such as the A66, the dualling of the A1 up in Northumberland, or of course Lower Thames Crossing. The decision on that has been postponed. So there's an ongoing dialogue the industry needs to have with the government about how we can support them achieve their economic aims. But in the short term, huge relief for hauliers up and down the country.
Quick thought from you, Max Shepherd, was there anything that wasn't in the budget you really would have liked to have seen?
Yeah, so one thing we would have liked is an extension of the increase in the stamp duty thresholds. So now from April 2025, any home mover purchasing a house over £125,000 will be subject to stamp duty. So if you were buying an average home of £280,000 in the UK, you will now pay £4,000 in terms of stamp duty as opposed to £1,500 before this budget. So that is one of the concerns we have for the housing market.
And Amanda, final one to you. Again, a lot of talk pre-budget about the potential impact on consumer confidence and business confidence when it comes to investment. It always takes a while to digest the detail of a budget, but from what you've seen from the Chancellor today in that 80 minutes or so that she stood up, what is your sense about the confidence of business in the current economic climate that she's set out?
I think there'll be a cautious approach at the beginning to understand, tangibly what is actually changing and see that happening. I think there's some sense of optimism. I do think there are, outlooks of growth and certainly potential for businesses. I just think that we need, balanced support. That means whether it be capital investment through grant support for businesses, consideration to investment for growth generally. I think that's going to be really important, and businesses are going to be looking for that support.
Thank you all very much. So some reaction from across industry and different sectors here in Pudsey, the Chancellor's constituency. As ever, the full details of the budget are going to emerge over the next few hours and days, Joe. But I think what's very clear is that people are already considering what is going to be the real world impact of this very significant first budget.